Hey, good morning. This is Pastor Matt Buttermore from Landmark Missionary Baptist Church in Hoopa Valley, California. Thank you for joining us for another time in Sunday School and in God's Word. We are continuing to go through the series called Behold He Cometh, out of the 10th through 22nd chapters of the book of Revelation. Right now we are in the 18th chapter of the book of Revelation. So things are starting to come very quickly to the end in our study, but I'm glad that you have joined us. Today's title is out of the Revelation chapter 18. The Fall of Rome is the title of this lesson today. Okay. The key verses for today are in verses 4 through 5. We'll look at the entire text broken down as we get into our points. But the key verses for now, verses 4 and 5, which says, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities." The application, as provided by the lesson writer in the quarterly, is the student will learn that God hates false religion and commands his people to come away from it, for he will ultimately judge it severely. Now, concerning our first look, if we remember back to our last chapter, in chapter 17, we saw some things revealed about both the harlot of Babylon and the seven-headed beast. It seems clear to me that the beast represents the political seat of the Antichrist, while the woman, the harlot, represents the religious aspect. And there is a lot of figurativism in all of this, so that is all speculation based on a lot of the things that I've seen in the scriptures concerning these things. We will know. I think that we'll be able to put all the pieces together once we see these things revealed to us. But at the very least, we need to make ourselves prepared so that we're not taken by surprise and that we're not falling for the deceit that's going to come as a result. So, but I'm treating it as it were right now that as if the beast were the Antichrist, or at least the political seat of the Antichrist, and the woman represents the religious aspect. Their ultimate goal is to make war with the Lamb of God and with his saints. However, this will only end in failure, as the Lamb will overcome. After all, he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And that was the focus of chapter 17, indicating that the methods and the expectation of the Antichrist, the false prophet, all of those that will be in that political and religious corner, that they will ultimately fail and Jesus Christ will reign. That brings us to our chapter today, which is about the fall and destruction of Babylon. Now, to kind of put things into perspective, we know that thousands of years ago, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar had conquered much of the known world at that time, setting up a Babylonian empire. And we see several empires in the scriptures. In fact, the book of Daniel, whom Daniel answered directly to Nebuchadnezzar, and some of the other both Babylonian and Persian kings. We found in Daniel, according to the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar, that there would be many great world empires. Specifically, there's been more. Obviously, out there have been many empires, but the reach of the empires in the scriptures are our focus, right? First the Babylonian, then the Medo-Persian, then the Greek, then the Roman, and now we're looking at the what I would consider the rise of the Roman Empire from the ashes, like a phoenix so to speak. And there's some things that that I think that we revealed in the last chapter and a little bit in this chapter to support that. But in essence, when we talk about Babylon, we are talking about the changeover in these the changeover in these empires, but as one entity, right? We're not seeing necessarily Babylon as it were, and Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know that there's evidence of that, but Babylon is figurative of this world power that will exist during that time. Okay. So as we get into our lesson now, the first point we want to make is concerning the strong voice of an angel. Verses 1 through 3 from Revelation 18 says, "And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils and the birds." Oh, I skipped a line there. Let me start over. "And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies." All right. So some notes about this. Although it's unclear if there's a specific angel that this is speaking of, but it at least makes the point to bring these things out, that this angel had tremendous power, that the glory of this angel filled and lightened or illuminated the earth, and that he cried with a strong and mighty voice. Okay. Once again, what all of that means, I'm not sure, but I think it's worth taking note of in case that's something that we would face one day as these things come about. Now, what was his proclamation? His proclamation is, Babylon is fallen. Okay. Now, very interesting here. It's the same language, and this is a reference, I believe, to a prophecy of Isaiah used concerning Babylon in Isaiah chapter 21, verse 9, which says, "And behold, here cometh a chariot of men, with a couple of horsemen. And he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the graven images of her gods he hath broken unto the ground." Okay, so there's a direct correlation here based on the common language. Babylon is fallen, between these two things. I don't know fully the context of Isaiah chapter 21. That is definitely worth some further review. When I read it, I didn't see immediately any such correlation, but I at least wanted to make that connection, that this is not something that originated in this vision to John. You can see obviously the connection, as many times things that we see in the book of Revelation have connection to Old Testament prophecy, many in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and a lot in Daniel. A lot of these end time prophecies that we see, and so there's a lot of connection and to be made here. But so I just wanted to make that connection for further study later on. We see it also used in chapter 14 of the book of Revelation. In verses 8 through 11, it says, "And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So in Revelation 14, you see the same words, Babylon is fallen. But at that time, it is an indication that it is coming. And now in chapter 18, it's an indication that it is already taken place, as if these two times of saying is bookends to the actual event of the fall of Babylon. And once again, making a correlation with chapter 17, we saw that the beast turned on the woman to see her destruction, according to verses 16 and 17 of Revelation chapter 17, which says, And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. So even what seems to be the difference between the political and the religious aspects of this final kingdom, that it's going to implode, they're going to turn on one another, and the beast is going to turn on this woman, whatever she may be. Once again, I think it's representative of the religious form, like a one world religion, that the political aspect is going to turn against the religious, and it's going to implode, indicating the end of this woman, whomever she may be. But at the very least, you see that, the beast turns on this woman, okay? And that would most certainly signal the end of the reign or influence of this woman. And I say influence because we'll look at some things later in this passage that suggest many of her sins are not in her own actions, but in enticing others to sin and commit iniquity. Okay. According to this passage, there will be new inhabitants in this city, in her. She becomes a habitation for demons, evil spirits, and unclean birds. Now, I'm not sure if this is figurative or literal, but it is obvious that this indicates that the deeply wicked existence that this city has. Okay, very interesting language in response to that. Okay, and it goes on to give at least an initial reason for her epic destruction. Why would Babylon, this woman, be guiltier of this destruction? Her guilt was not exclusively an action of her own, as I just mentioned, but in that she enticed others to wickedness. And when you see the scriptures, you understand that, yes, you have to be held accountable for your own actions, but when your wickedness directly influences the wickedness of others, you have a higher standard that you are living according to. And she will not only have to answer for her own sins, but the sins that she enticed others to commit as well. Not that they're off the hook, but that she has a greater condemnation as a result. Why? Because she enticed all the nations to drink of her wine. One of the commentaries that I saw concerning this indicated that, looking back, they would keep people sedated or drunk on wine so that they could take advantage of them and charge them a tremendous amount of money for the things that they would purchase. Frankly, we see opioid epidemics in our country as it is right now, and sometimes I wonder if that is a means to control other people, because it's certainly powerful. I saw a news clip from downtown LA, which I believe now has over 60,000 homeless people living on the streets, perhaps even more since the virus and the subsequent recession came about, people losing their businesses, their jobs. I imagine that number has gone up, at least some. But the crazy thing is most of those people, even by their own admission, are not out there because they can't get a job or they can't afford a home. It's because of their addiction to drugs and so on, and they don't want to do enough for themselves to get out of those situations. But that's just an example that of control and manipulation that can come as a result of intoxication of some sort. So, I found that very interesting. Is that suggesting that this is what this is talking about? No, but I think it at least is a good consideration, something to keep in mind when you understand this. There certainly is something to be said about that the nations were drunk on her wine. That, obviously that's figurative, but what is the implication there? Okay. She enticed the nations to drink of her wine. She enticed all the kings to commit fornication with her. What does that mean per se? Fornication a lot of times in the scriptures has the idea that you're drawn away from faithfulness and service to God to serve another. That it's as if you're cheating on God, so to speak. Or could this be something else? Not too sure. We'll know one day, I believe. And then finally, the merchants were made rich because she enticed the nations to indulge themselves with everything that the merchants sold. Because of this woman, whomever she may be, people got rich. The merchants got rich, businesses got rich, feeding off of the commitment of the people to her. Very interesting situation. And is that something we can see today? I don't know. It's certainly caused me to kind of look up and pay attention. What are we seeing happening with our businesses, our corporations, that are just getting, they say the rich get richer, but how are they getting richer? Are there those that have been enriched because of this hidden, this hidden empire, so to speak? And we'll look at that in a moment too. How is it hidden? Because the people have committed to her, whatever she may be, that these people have gotten rich off of her. Kind of interesting language here, and it's really piqued my curiosity. Once again, I don't know what all of that means. There's a lot of figurative language and a lack of clarity, but that's on purpose. God truly knows what He's doing in choosing what to reveal to us and when. And I believe there's going to come a day where it's going to be revealed to us. Whether it's while this is all happening or not. So, okay. So that was concerning the strong voice of an angel. Now we look at a warning from heaven to earth in verses 4 through 8, where it says, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, 'Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her.'" Wow. Very strong language here. Very harsh punishment, but clearly one that is warranted. Okay? So this is the warning. A new voice speaks up, right? It's no longer this angel that we saw. It doesn't clarify what this voice is. It just says it's another another voice from heaven. Okay. But what was the content of that warning? Um, his people, he says, my people, so that, there is that aspect. So his people are among her, but they are called out of her. Come out of her. Don't be among her, right? And what's interesting is that if you remember back to chapter 17 and verse 15, the point was made that this woman sits on many waters, right? And it's clarified what those waters were. In verse 15 it says, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And this is what I was meaning in regard to that she's hidden, right? As far as we can tell, no empire exists on this earth, right? Not a world empire, not one that would be applicable to this current description and situation. But and I believe that's why it lends itself to the idea that this beast that we saw was and is not and will be. I forget how the language actually speaks there, or how it comes across, but that it was. So it was well known. It's a historic. It has its place in history, but it is not. But it will be again, and I believe that's why. That's why I say that I think it is still here. It's just taken a different form so as to hide among the people. Okay, and I believe it's in a religious standpoint, but because it's hidden among the people, so it's still there. Babylon is still around. It's just not in the same form that it once was, but it will be once again. It will come out. It will be revealed. Okay. He says, do not partake in her sins. So she has, the disposition to entice others to sin with her. He says, don't fall for it. Don't partake. Okay? And if you don't partake in her sins, you won't partake in her plagues. Right? That's the warning. Right? If you come out of her and don't partake in her sins, but if you do, you will partake in her plagues also. So it gives you an opportunity to remove from her so that she alone is guilty, she alone will receive of the penalty of her sins. Obviously, I believe there are many who will fall for it, but I beg your pardon. If we're speaking of children of God here, then it's probably that they are just called out of her, and certainly anyone who has accepted Jesus Christ won't take part in those plagues or those penalties, at least not the eternal ones like hell or the lake of fire. Okay, so here's the reason for the warning, right? Here's the question: why was Babylon worthy of these plagues? Her sins had reached to heaven, and God remembered her iniquities. And obviously, reach to heaven is a figure of speech, and it indicates such a big quantity that it's as if they reached from earth to heaven. It wasn't just that she had sinned, it was that her sins were an immeasurable abundance against God. He said he could not simply forget those sins. Okay? This is why they received the warning. She was, the punishment of Babylon was certain. The plagues that I'm sure had to do with what we saw in chapter 16. The seven last vials. That is in essence what they were being warned of and what she was going to endure. And here is, he commands retribution, right? Not only does he say, come out from among her so that you don't take part in her plagues, but he also turns to the saints and commands that they take part in rewarding her for what she rewarded them. Right? The Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, but obviously he is choosing to use his authority to command the saints that they go out and that they pay back this retribution, not just an eye for an eye or tooth for tooth, but double, right? That they would take double, or that she would endure double the consequences for her actions, and that her cup should be filled, or as she filled her own cup, it should be filled back to her double. And you go back to chapter 17 to indicate that her cup was filled with the blood of the prophets and the martyrs. Right? That we know that many of our faith among the prophets, among the apostles, the disciples, the early disciples, and many of the disciples throughout the centuries have given their lives in the name of Jesus Christ. And that blood has not been shed in vain as far as God is concerned. Right? And now the retribution is coming as a result. Once again in chapter 17, verses 4 through 6, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So this is an indication of her cup. Her cup was filled with the blood of the martyrs and the saints. Okay, but that will not go unanswered. She will receive double for what she caused to those, and that is the judgment of God commanded on her. Okay, and there's the passage. Sorry, I didn't put it up there for you. Some further clarification of her sins, just in case it hadn't been already clear. The scriptures indicated that she glorified herself. Right? How much she hath glorified herself. And if I am right in that this is a religious organization, especially one that claims Christianity as its own, to have taken glory from God and put it upon herself is completely damnable, completely condemnable. That she lived, it says that she lived deliciously. Oh, sorry about that. Glorified herself, lived deliciously. That just means indulgently. There is I don't believe it's prevalent today, but in the past there are those who have committed their lives, kind of like King Solomon had indicated that he had given his life to pleasure, is basically what you're looking at. That they held nothing back from themselves. Whatever they wanted, they took, and they enjoyed it. And that's what life was all about. Just completely indulged themselves, right? And as a result, complacency, right? He says that she said in her heart, I sit a queen, I am no widow, I shall see no sorrow, right? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's in essence what this is calling out, as opposed to living for the Lord, giving God glory, living according to what He gives us, and making sure that we give back to Him that which He requires, and always being grateful. Okay? Now, finally, we see final judgment and punishment on her. Because of all of these things, she was worthy of enduring a day full of plagues, death, mourning, and famine. Okay, it's not going to be a pretty sight. It's going to be quite ugly, but trust me when I say that this is a holy God that has passed this judgment, and it is in complete retribution for what her actions are. Right now, it seems like it seems very harsh. And to a degree it is, but it's not unwarranted. It's not unfair. It's absolutely fair. When we see exactly what this woman was guilty of, whomever she may be, I think that the only conclusion that we can come to is that God is just passing holy judgment upon her that will end with her being burned with fire. All right, and then in our final point, the consequences of the fall of Babylon, according to verses 9 through 19, which says, "And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously, once again indulgently with her, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and thyine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate." Wow. All of this is just the response to this woman and her judgment, that she is going to receive the recompense for her actions, everything that she, every sin and iniquity that she dealt out, every blood that she shed, every saint that she killed, the prophets, the apostles, all those that were at the receiving end of her wrath. All of that is going to be paid back to her, and it's going to be for all the world to see. And all of these that benefited from her are going to stand in complete awe. It's going to be a sight to behold, I imagine. Right? And their initial response, mourning. They could no longer take part in her indulgences. They were no longer able to get rich because of her, and their wealth disappeared immediately. And the other response is fear. They all had to stand afar off, as it said, lest they should also take part in her torment. Wow. That is going to be just a crazy event, whatever it looks like. And that is their response. In our final word, you may realize now that 19 is not the end of the chapter. I wanted to use the last few verses to be able to, or use the final word to go over the last few verses, because I think that that these verses are absolutely pertinent, because it indicates the response by the saints after all of this takes place. It would seem to me like that is worth consideration. Okay, so in verses 20 through 24 it says, Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, and whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of the millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived, and in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and all that were slain upon the earth. Wow. Wow. It seems to me, I mean, this is a lot to reveal about this city, this Babylon, whomever it is. Um, that much of the world got rich as a result of her. Once again, that's just piquing my curiosity, and I've searched on stuff, I've Googled stuff, and didn't really come to any major conclusion about all of this. I still stand by what I think is that this is a religious organization, as it were. But I can't say for sure, and I'm open to the Lord revealing the truth in regard to that. But at the very least, this woman, she's not only going down, she's going down hard. And that, according to this, is something to rejoice over. Right? That this one that has shed the blood of apostles and prophets and saints and martyrs over the years, that she's going to be held accountable once and for all. And everybody's going to see it. Wow. What an amazing thought. Sombering thought, for sure. But an amazing thought that once and for all, the Lord is going to hold her accountable. Because I think once she's revealed, I think we're going to understand exactly the severity of her sins. Or it's going to be revealed to us what those sins actually will be. Right? And there will be plenty of reason to rejoice once she is no more. So, we're getting into some very heavy stuff in these chapters. The whole book of Revelation is very heavy to begin with, but we've just seen the plagues being poured out. We've just seen the end of Babylon, this great city, whatever this city is, whatever, form it takes as it is right now and what it will be, it's coming to an end. But ultimately, we have plenty to rejoice over. And we're going to find that in the coming chapters, the best is yet to come. And that should give us a tremendous amount of hope. Understand, we're going to see some stuff. Things are going to get bad before they get better. That's I've said it probably about every lesson or so. But things are going to get pretty bad before they can get better again. But they most certainly will get better. And that's the hope that we need to hold on to. That's the hope that we need to get us through what we're going through and help us to drive us to understand that as time is running out, right? It always has been. Every day is a day closer to it, and that hourglass, those sands are dropping. We just don't know exactly how many grains of sand are left before all this is going to take place. So we need to be prepared and we need to be busy. All right. Thank you so much for your consideration with this. I pray that this was a blessing to you, and we look forward to the next lesson. God bless.